My name's Maya Collins. I'm 23, a junior UX designer in Austin, Texas. I'm too trusting, the kind of woman who hands people the map to her heart and expects them to use it carefully. Tonight should have been a soft landing after my UT graduation. Instead, I free fell into something colder. At my graduation dinner, my mother leaned in for the photos, her lipstick still wet, and said, "We wish you were never born." The flash popped. The room applauded. My world tilted 20 degrees. If you're watching, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Has family ever blindsided you like this? Where are you watching from, and what would you have said back? I'm listening, honestly. Tell me in the comments. They booked a corner table at Violet Crown Bistro, the place with the fairy lights and the rosemary bread that comes out in tiny, steaming domes. "For the graduate!" the host sang, and a champagne cork skittered under a table 2 rows over. My dad lifted his phone and tried to record me walking in, but he fumbled and filmed his shoes. "Smile," Mom chimed, already standing to adjust the napkin on my lap like I was 6, and the spaghetti threatened to disgrace me. She smelled like gardenias and brand new decisions. I didn't recognize the perfume. "Proud of you, kiddo," my brother Ethan said, tapping his glass against mine. He's 20, a sophomore who never texts back but always shows up when it counts. He squeezed my shoulder, 2 quick presses that meant, "You're doing great." "I'm your guy." The waitress poured bubbly that caught the light like sugar. I told myself to breathe through my nose so I wouldn't cry. Not from sadness, just gratitude. The kind where your chest fills up and you're embarrassed at how human you are. I'd worked double shifts at a campus coffee cart, coded prototypes past midnight, and squinted through critiques that felt like hunger. Tonight, I wanted the easy kind of full. Toast? Dad cleared his throat. He's an HVAC tech with hands that look like they've wrestled thunderstorms. To Maya. First in the family to graduate from college. To stubbornness, perseverance. He corrected himself and we laughed. Mom smiled, big and practiced, and slipped her hand over his, but didn't quite touch. I clock details for a living. It's what UX people do. Watch the flow, note the friction, fix the pain points. The friction was everywhere. The way Mom's jaw tightened when the server asked, "Separate checks or—" The micro pause before she said, "Together." The way Dad's eyes flicked to her as if asking permission to breathe, but I ignored it. Because I'm a fixer, not a fighter. Because good girls give grace like it costs nothing. The plates arrived like tiny celebrations. Blistered shishitos, lemon butter scallops, a ribeye the size of a textbook. Mom cut into hers as if it had said something cruel. She tapped her knife, glanced at Ethan, then at me. "Got your offer letter printed? You'll want hard copies," she said. Her voice was bright but flat. "Yeah," I said. "I start at Cinder Labs in 2 weeks. They're a small product team. Accessibility work." I tried to keep the giddiness in check. My dream, my ladder, and my view. Mom nodded. Prestige matters. Benefits matter." She buttered bread like an evaluation. "Location matters." "Austin's perfect," I said lightly. My apartment's tiny, but the windows face east. Morning light. I wanted to tell her about the pothos plant I'd rescued from the discount bin, how it sprouted 2 new leaves during finals like it believed in me. "That's nice," she said. The words sat there, clipped and cool. Dad coughed. "Your grandma always said East Light makes saints and sinners look the same." "Grandma also believed the microwave was government surveillance," Ethan muttered. I snorted, and Mom shot him a look sharp enough to peel paint. We took the photos between entree and dessert, servers juggling plates, the bistro's owner clapping me on the back as if I'd invented the alphabet. Mom maneuvered us near the ivy wall. "Tuck your chin," she said, pressing close. Her mouth barely moved. "We wish you were never born." Everything inside me froze. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a sudden winter where my bones used to be. I smiled at the camera like an obedient ghost. The flash went off. People cheered. Somewhere, a cork gave up and leapt again. "What?" I heard my own voice, tiny and distant. "What did you say?" Mom's smile widened, perfect as a storefront. "I said we're so proud," she sang at normal volume and kissed my cheek. Her lipstick branded me. I scanned faces. Dad, oblivious, adjusting the angle. Ethan, watching me instead of the lens, his brow knitting like he'd heard the ground crack. The server slid a dessert board in, sugared strawberries glowing like warning lights. "Celebration flight," she trilled. "Complimentary." She set down a sparkler that hissed bright and mean. I stared at the flame and thought of how often women are asked to pose beside explosions. "Mom," I said softly, when the sparkler died and everyone blinked away the harmless violence. "Can we talk outside?" She arranged her napkin, careful as surgery. "After dessert," she said. "Don't be ungracious, Maya." Ungracious. The worst thing a generous daughter can be. "Everything okay?" Dad asked, finally catching the weather. He looked between us like a man who's lost the map, convinced the road will apologize if he's polite enough. "Everything's wonderful," Mom said. "Stainless." "Tell us again about the job." "Honey, I told them about my team. Samira, the lead designer who wore vintage boots and swore by user interviews. Kenji, a front-end dev who taught me how to read error logs like poetry. I painted a happy mural over a fresh crack in the wall. That's the trick of being too trusting. You keep decorating the house while the foundation groans." Ethan leaned in. "What did she say, Maya?" I didn't answer. I cut into a creme brulee that fought back, carapace splintering like ice over a lake you shouldn't cross. Mom watched the break with interest. Dad asked if anyone wanted coffee. The server said 2 Americanos, like she knew families by their caffeine rituals. When the bill came, Dad reached first. Mom touched the leather folder with 2 fingers and slid it closer to her. "We'll handle it," she said. "A power move over flourless chocolate cake." "It's my treat," I blurted. "I saved for this." I wanted to buy my own celebration, claim a receipt that said I belong here. Her eyes flicked up. "Keep your savings," she said. "You'll need them." The words carried weight, like a bag of rocks handed gently. For what? Rent? The moving truck? The part of adulthood where parents shift from steering to cheering? I didn't ask. I kept smiling. I tipped generously. We posed again by the ivy, and this time Ethan stood between us, casual in a way that announced he'd decided to be a wall. Outside, the night smelled like grilled peaches and car exhaust. The bistro's sign hummed. Strangers clapped me on the back and told me to chase it, as if the future were a dog that fetches clean. Mom's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and tilted it away. A tiny notification hovered, then vanished. Plan B confirmed. I felt that winter again, sliding under my skin. Plan B? I asked, my voice careful. She slipped the phone into her bag, her smile as bright and empty as a brand new plate. "Congratulations, Maya," she said, stepping closer as if to fix a strand of hair. "You'll understand soon." And that's when I realized the whisper wasn't a single cruel moment. It was a door. I grew up in a split-level ranch on the outskirts of Austin, the kind with faded shutters and a swing set that creaked like it had secrets. We weren't poor, not exactly, but we lived paycheck to paycheck. Vacations meant day trips to the lake, and fancy dinners meant Olive Garden with extra breadsticks. I didn't mind. It made achievements taste sharper, like victory had texture. My family was stitched together with rituals. Friday pizza night, Dad bringing home a greasy box after a long week. Sunday mornings, Mom hummed hymns while she polished the silver no one ever used. Birthdays meant dollar store balloons taped to the ceiling fan. And graduations? They were sacred. You'd think the world itself stopped spinning until the family had gathered, eaten, and applauded the milestone. That's why I didn't question it when Mom insisted on handling the reservations. "It's tradition," she said, her eyes flashing the way they did when a rule wasn't meant to be debated. I let her, because tradition was supposed to mean comfort, right? But even as a kid, I noticed the cracks. Mom had a way of turning sweetness into sharpness without ever raising her voice. When I won a spelling bee in 5th grade, she hugged me, smiled for the photos, then whispered, "Don't let it go to your head." The words slid under my skin and stayed. Dad was the opposite. Loud, warm, clumsy with affection. He'd show up at school recitals with paint still on his hands, shouting my name like I was a rock star. Mom would press her lips together, embarrassed, as if love should be discreet, folded, ironed smooth. Ethan came later, when I was 3. He grew up watching me do everything first. He called me coach because I taught him how to ride a bike, how to write an essay, and how to dodge Mom's mood swings. We were partners in survival before we even knew that's what it was. Looking back, I can trace the moment the house's foundation started to groan. It was during the senior year of high school. I'd been accepted into UT Austin, full ride, scholarships, work study. I ran into the kitchen waving the acceptance letter, practically dancing. Dad lifted me off the floor. Ethan whooped. But Mom? She just smoothed the corner of the paper and said, "Austin's far. What about staying closer? Community college would save money." I laughed it off. I thought she was worried about tuition. But the way her eyes lingered on me, calculating, unreadable, it was something deeper. A warning. Every Christmas, we'd decorate the tree together. This year, my last before college, Mom set aside one ornament, a crystal angel my grandma had given her. She hung it herself, high and away from reach. "Some things aren't meant to be touched," she said, her tone low, final. At the time, I thought she meant heirlooms. But later, sitting in that restaurant with her whisper still echoing in my head, I realized she'd been talking about me. About boundaries she'd never let me cross. Even during college visits, Mom's approval came in measured doses. She never once told me she was proud. Instead, she'd critique, "Your skirt's too short. Your shoes don't match the occasion. Don't brag about your grades. People will resent you." I built myself around those critiques, sanding down my edges until I was smooth enough to pass inspection. Too trusting, too willing to believe her coldness was just care in disguise. And yet, Ethan always knew. He'd roll his eyes behind her back, slip me notes that said, "Ignore her. You're a legend." He was my anchor, even when the tide of Mom's moods pulled hard. So when she whispered that dagger of a sentence at my graduation dinner, it didn't come from nowhere. It was the culmination of years of subtle cuts, carefully hidden behind tradition and ritual. L. Nothing prepared me for that notification on her phone. Plan B confirmed. The words looped in my head all night, twisting into every possibility. A financial plan? A secret? A betrayal waiting to detonate? I didn't know yet, but I could feel it humming under the surface, like live wires hidden in the walls of my family home. And that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan where we used to tape balloons, one thought kept circling back. Whatever Plan B was, it had everything to do with me. The morning after graduation dinner, I woke up in my childhood room, the walls still painted a pale yellow I'd chosen at 12. My suitcase sat half-packed by the door, a reminder that adulthood waited for me in a small Austin apartment. But what waited downstairs was tension thick enough to slice. Dad was frying eggs, humming off key to a classic rock station. The smell of butter should have felt like comfort, but it clung heavily, suffocating. Mom sat at the table, scrolling her phone, her posture perfect, a porcelain figurine daring the world to crack her. "Morning," I said. My voice sounded cautious, even to me. "Morning, sweetheart," Dad replied, flipping an egg too hard. The yolk burst. He winced. Mom didn't look up. "Don't be late meeting your landlord today. First impressions matter." "I won't." I poured coffee, my hands trembling slightly. "Thanks again for dinner. It meant a lot." Her gaze lifted, sharp. "Gratitude's nice. Just don't mistake obligation for generosity." The cup nearly slipped from my hand. "What does that mean?" "Nothing," she said smoothly, sipping her tea. "Eat before it gets cold." Later, Ethan caught me on the porch as I loaded boxes into my car. He leaned against the railing, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "What did she say to you last night?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "You heard it too?" "Not the words, just the way you froze." I know that look. His jaw tightened. "She's been worse lately. Colder. You can't let it get in your head, Maya." I tried to smile. "I've been dealing with it for years." "What's one more comment?" He shook his head. It's not just comments anymore. She's planning something. I remembered the notification. Plan B confirmed. My stomach turned. What do you mean? I asked. She's been making calls when Dad's at work. I overheard her say your name. And money. His voice dropped. Big money. My pulse spiked. Money? Ethan, what? Shh. He glanced at the kitchen window. Mom's silhouette shifted behind the curtain. Just watch your back. Promise me. That evening, Mom insisted we all have one last family dinner before I officially moved out. She set the table with the crystal angel centerpiece, the one she never let anyone touch. As she poured wine, she asked casually, "Do you really think Cinder Labs will last more than a year? Startups fold all the time. My fork hovered midair. They're stable, funded, growing," she smirked. We'll see. Hope you didn't get too comfortable imagining a future there." "Why would you say that?" I asked, my voice trembling with hurt. "Because reality doesn't bend for dreamers," she said flatly. Dad cleared his throat. "Linda, don't." "What?" She raised her brows. "I'm just being practical. Someone has to keep her grounded." I blinked back tears, forcing the bite of pasta into my mouth. Ethan kicked me lightly under the table, his eyes pleading, "Don't give her the satisfaction," but the words are still carved deep. After dinner, I carried plates to the sink. Mom's phone buzzed again on the counter. This time I saw it clearly. Message, "Wire transfer cleared." She won't suspect. Before I could read more, she snatched the phone, her smile stiff. "Privacy, Maya," she said coolly. "You should learn the word." She turned and left the kitchen, her heels sharp against the tile. I stood frozen, suds dripping from my hands, the echo of her whisper from graduation replaying in my head. "We wish you were never born. And now? Wire transfers? Plans? Money tied to my name?" I didn't know what she was hiding, but for the first time, I felt certain of something. Mom wasn't just cruel. She was dangerous. I moved into my tiny east-facing apartment with its crooked blinds and stubborn locks. Determined to start fresh, I told myself to focus on work, on independence, on the sunrise painting my walls golden. But the shadow of Mom's whisper and that wire transfer notification followed me like a ghost. 2 weeks into my new job, the betrayal detonated. It was a Tuesday. I was at my desk, sketching out wireframes for a healthcare app. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, but something made me pick up. "Hello? This is Mr. Sanders from First Union Bank," the voice said briskly. "We're just confirming your request to liquidate your education savings account. We'll finalize the transfer today." My pen dropped. What transfer?" "Request came through yesterday," he said. "Signed electronically by your mother, Linda Collins. Authorization was tied to her as guardian on the original account." I felt the room tilt. "I'm 23. I'm not a minor. She can't. Technically, since she set up the account, she's still a custodian," he explained. "Unless you legally severed control, she has access," my voice cracked. "How much?" $32,000, he said. "Shall I proceed?" "No," I nearly shouted. Heads turned at the office. My face burned. "Don't process anything. That money is mine. For my future—" He hesitated. "You'll need legal documentation to block it." I hung up, my pulse hammering, my throat raw. 32,000. My safety net. The fund I'd scraped together from scholarships, grants, and summer jobs. Gone, unless I stopped her. That night, I drove back to my parents' house, fury like fire under my skin. The porch light glared as if it knew. Mom opened the door before I knocked. "Maya," she said smoothly. "What a surprise. You tried to steal my money." My voice shook, but I held her gaze. She smiled. "Steal? Don't be dramatic. That money was always ours. We guided you, raised you, and made sacrifices. You think scholarships just fall from the sky? You wouldn't have gotten them without us." "That's not true." My hands curled into fists. "I worked for that. It's mine." Her eyes glittered, cold and calculating. "You don't own anything, Maya, not yet." "Consider it." "Repayment. For what?" I demanded. "For existing." Her voice was ice. "Do you know what we gave up for you?" What did I give up? You were never supposed to happen. You ruined everything. The words hit harder than the whisper at dinner. My knees wobbled. Dad appeared behind her, face pale. Linda, stop! Don't pretend, Mark, she snapped. You've thought it too. He shook his head fiercely. Never, don't you put that on me. Ethan stormed into the hallway. What the hell is going on? She's stealing my savings, I said, tears burning hot trails down my face. Mom's lips curved into a cruel smile. Not stealing. Correcting a mistake. The argument spiraled. Voices rose, plates rattled. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Mom, calm as a queen, said, if you want the money, sue me. You'll lose. And you'll prove to everyone just how ungrateful you really are. Her words cut deeper than a knife. They were crafted to humiliate, to paint me as selfish, spoiled. I looked at Dad, hoping for rescue, but he stood frozen, torn. Ethan was red-faced, fists clenched, but too young to challenge her power. The betrayal was complete. She hadn't just whispered cruelty. She was trying to erase my independence, my future, everything I'd fought for. I left that night shaking, humiliated, barely able to drive. My phone buzzed nonstop. Ethan texting, don't give up. I'll help, promise. Dad calling, voice cracking, saying we'll figure something out. But Mom? She didn't call. She didn't text. Instead, the next morning, I got an email notification. A legal notice from the bank. The transfer had gone through. $32,000, my years of sacrifice, vanished into her account. And with it, the last illusion that my mother ever loved me. I barely remember the drive back to Austin. The world outside my windshield was smeared neon, headlights bleeding into each other. By the time I reached my apartment, I was shaking so hard I couldn't get the key into the lock. When the door finally opened, I collapsed on the floor, clutching the rug like it could keep me from shattering. For days, I lived on instant ramen and silence. I couldn't face my coworkers, so I called in sick. I couldn't answer Ethan's texts. They piled up. Maya, please talk to me. She's out of control. Don't let her win. I'll help you fix this. Promise. Even Dad called once, his voice low, ashamed. I don't know what to say. I should have stopped her. I'm sorry, kiddo. But apologies didn't pay rent. They didn't replace $32,000. At night, I lay awake replaying her words. You were never supposed to happen. Every insecurity I'd ever buried clawed to the surface. Maybe I was a burden. Maybe I'd only been tolerated. Maybe love had always been conditional, dangling like bait on a hook. It all came to a head one Saturday. I went to pay my first utility bill, logged into my bank account, and stared at the zero balance in my savings. The reality hit like a physical blow. I sank to the floor, shaking, whispering to myself, it's gone. It's all gone. And then the tears came. Ugly, raw, gut-wrenching sobs that stole the air from my lungs. I cried until I couldn't see, until my throat burned, until my body felt empty. For the first time in my life, I wished I had never been born. But then, something shifted. As I sat there on the cold linoleum, surrounded by crumpled tissues and silence, I realized something important. She hadn't broken me. She wanted me powerless, erased. But I was still here, still breathing, still me. I thought of Ethan's notes, the ones he used to slip into my locker. Ignore her. You're a legend. I thought of Dad's rough hands, clumsy but warm, lifting me onto his shoulders when I was 5. I thought of the hours I'd worked, the nights I'd studied, the mornings I'd fought exhaustion to keep building my future, and I thought of Mom's face when she said, "Sue me." You'll lose. That was the moment the spark lit. I wasn't going to stay broken. No, I was going to rebuild piece by piece. And then I was going to make her pay. Not with fists, not with screaming, but with something sharper. Something undeniable. I wiped my face, stood up and opened my laptop. My hands were still trembling, but my mind was clear. If Mom had a plan B, then I would have a plan of my own. A plan she wouldn't see coming. I didn't know yet how deep her betrayal went, or how much darker it would get. But I knew one thing. I wouldn't stay her victim. I didn't know where to begin. But I knew this. My mother had crossed a line. And I wasn't going to let her bury me under her lies and manipulations. For once in my life, my trusting nature had to step aside. I needed to be sharp, strategic, patient. I needed a plan. I started with the bank. I called Mr. Sanders back, this time with my voice steady. I need every document tied to that transfer, I said. There was a pause. Miss Collins, those records are protected. I'm not asking for her records. I'm asking for mine, I cut in. Every document with my name on it. Every signature. Every authorization. Send them. He hesitated, then sighed. I'll email you what I can. When the files arrived, I opened them with shaking hands. There it was. My name, my account, my mother's signature authorizing the transfer. Forgery? Maybe not. But coercion? Abuse of custodian rights? Definitely. And then I saw something else. The receiving account wasn't even hers directly. It was in the name of a new trust, one she'd set up 3 months ago. My stomach dropped. Plan B, I called Ethan, finally, he said, his voice tight. I've been going insane. What's happening? She took it, I said. All of it. And she set up some kind of trust. He cursed under his breath. I knew it. She's been meeting with a lawyer downtown. I thought it was about refinancing the house, but... No, I whispered. It was about me. About my money. There was silence. Then Ethan said, Tell me what you need me to do. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. I need you to be my eyes and ears. Watch her. Listen. If she slips, if she talks about it, write it down. Done, he said without hesitation. I knew I couldn't rush. Mom thrived on confrontation, on making me emotional so she could twist the knife. If I wanted to win, I had to stay calm, so I played the dutiful daughter on the surface. I answered her occasional texts with short replies. I even stopped by once, acting polite, smiling while my insides churned. Settling in, okay? She asked sweetly, sipping tea. Yeah, I said. Job's going great. Good, she said. Just, remember who made it possible? My jaw clenched, but I smiled. Of course. Inside, though, I was memorizing every word. Every lie, every manipulation. I made an appointment with a legal aid clinic in Austin. The lawyer, a tired woman in her 40s, flipped through my documents. She liquidated $32,000 under custodial rights, she said. It's murky. Technically, she had access. But the creation of a new trust? That's suspicious. Especially if you're the beneficiary. Beneficiary? I frowned. The lawyer slid the papers closer. Look, the trust lists you as the primary dependent, which means she could control the money under the guise of managing it for you. But if she's misusing it? I leaned forward. Can we prove that? Not yet, the lawyer said. But if she spends that money for herself, not your benefit, she's vulnerable. You need evidence, evidence. That word sank into me like steel. The next weekend, Ethan called. His voice was urgent. She's hosting a dinner. Some guy in a suit came by, lawyer maybe? I think it's about the trust, my pulse quickened. Record it, I whispered. Maya, please. She'll never know, just get me something. He hesitated. Then, all right, I'll do it. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, waiting. Hours passed. Finally, a message came through, an audio clip. I pressed play. Mom's voice, calm, confident. With the trust secured, Maya won't have direct access. She's too naive to fight it. By the time she realizes, the money will already be invested. Our investment. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was planning to erase me, legally, financially, completely. But now? Now I had proof. I stared at the recording, heart pounding. For the first time, the power shifted. She had her plan B, but I had mine too. The next morning, I replayed the recording 3 times, headphones pressed tight, my pulse thundering with each word. Maya won't have direct access. She's too naive to fight it. By the time she realizes the money will already be invested, our investment. Naive. That single word lit a fire in me. For years, she had used it as a weapon, too trusting, too dreamy, too soft. But now? Now it was going to be her undoing. I didn't go straight for war. No, I needed to test the strength of my new armor. At work, during lunch, I casually asked one of the senior designers, Samira, if she'd ever dealt with family stealing money. She raised her brows. Stealing? From you? I hesitated, then nodded. Something like that, hypothetically. Samira leaned closer. Hypothetically, lawyer up. Document everything. People like that count on you staying quiet. Her words slid into me like reinforcement beams. Quiet wouldn't save me. But noise? Noise could shake the walls. That weekend, I drove back to the house. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my nails dug crescents into the leather. Mom greeted me with her usual practiced warmth. Maya, look at you thriving. How's work? I smiled thinly. Good, busy, but I came to talk. She arched a brow. Talk? About what? The trust, I said, letting the word drop like a stone. Her expression didn't flicker, but her eyes sharpened. I don't know what you think you know. I leaned in, voice calm. I know you set it up. I know my money's in it. And I know you called it our investment, her smile faltered. Just slightly, but enough. Where did you hear that? She asked, her voice colder. I hear more than you think, I whispered. For the first time, I saw it. A hairline fracture in her armor. She wasn't invincible. Be careful, Maya, she said softly, menace laced under every syllable. You're playing with things you don't understand. I forced myself to hold her gaze. No, Mom. You're playing with something that doesn't belong to you. And I'm not a kid anymore. Her lips pressed together tight. You'll regret pushing me. Maybe. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Control. When I left, Ethan followed me out to my car. He looked at me with a mix of awe and relief. You stood up to her, he said. I've never seen anyone get under her skin like that. I exhaled shakily. Did it show? He grinned. Oh, yeah. She hates that you're not scared. I laughed, short and shaky. I'm terrified. Good, he said, squeezing my shoulder. Fear keeps you sharp. But don't stop now. You've got her rattled. That's a start. That night, I rechecked the trust documents. And there it was, an automatic transaction scheduled for next month. A management fee set to move $5,000 into an account tied directly to her name. She wasn't just investing, she was siphoning. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Evidence concrete. Undeniable proof. I called the lawyer the next day and forwarded everything. The recording, the scheduled transfer, and the bank paperwork. She called me back within hours. This changes things, Maya. If she's personally benefiting from that trust, we can argue misuse of custodial funds. She could face legal consequences. My heart soared. Not victory, not yet. But progress. A dent in her armor. When I hung up, I stared out my tiny apartment window at the sunrise washing the walls in gold. For the first time, it felt less like survival and more like momentum. But deep down I knew one thing. Small wins weren't enough. If I wanted true freedom, if I wanted revenge, I'd have to burn her entire empire to the ground. I rehearsed the next 48 hours like a stage actor rehearses her last scene. Every line, every silence, every breath. There was no room for improvisation. My mother's type thrived on improvising cruelty. I needed steel and choreography. First, the team. My lawyer, Roxanne, cool and efficient. Mr. Sanders from the bank, who'd gone from bureaucratic to alarmed once I presented the paper trail. And Ethan, my nervous, loyal sidekick who'd somehow become brave enough to wear a suit. We planned everything in a closed Slack thread in code and small triumphs. No family group chats. No leaking. Step 1, freeze the transfers. Roxanne filed emergency motions. The bank placed temporary holds. Management fees scheduled to siphon money into Mom's account were halted mid-flight. The trust's dashboard, once a blur of transactions, was suddenly a forensic map. Step 2. Subpoena the trust documents and the new trust's attorney. Roxanne wasn't playing small. She issued subpoenas that felt like a blade. The lawyer who'd helped my mom set up the trust, Mr. Halpern, who smelled faintly of aftershave and self-importance, was required to appear. He balked. He would have to answer under oath. Step 3. Expose. Not just in a courtroom, but where the ripples would matter. Reputation is currency in our neighborhood. My mother had always counted on whispers dying in living rooms. I wanted the whispers to scream. Roxanne suggested a quiet hearing first, probable cause, temporary injunction. But I wanted the personal. I needed to watch the faces of people who'd stood by her. So we did both. The courthouse hearing was clinical. The judge, an exhausted woman with tired eyes, reviewed the motions. Roxanne presented the bank records, the scheduled management fees, the trust creation date, and the audio clip where my mom calmly called me naive and boasted of rerouting my funds. The judge granted a temporary injunction to freeze the trust and ordered Mr. Halpern to produce all records. She also authorized a forensic audit. When I stepped out of the courthouse, the sun was sharp, almost aggressive. I felt vindicated. But legal papers don't satisfy wounds on the tongue. They don't make people face what they said. They don't repair laughter turned into knives. So Roxanne did something I didn't expect. She scheduled a mediation summit at the community center, the kind of place where PTA meetings and bingo nights happen. If this goes public, it should be on the record, she said. You'll have witnesses, neighbors, your father, anyone you want. Let her face herself in front of the people she's been charming for years. Her voice was a scalpel. I invited selectively. Dad came, Ethan came. A few family friends, people who'd waved at our porch for decades, came because they'd gotten an innocuous invite. I kept it small on purpose. Mom, confident and composed, agreed to come. She wore the perfume I recognized now for what it was, armor. We set up microphones. Roxanne introduced herself and the banker. Mr. Halpern sat there, fidgeting with a pen. I sat with my hands folded, feeling the old tremor in my fingers. I imagined a stage and stepped into it. Let's go on the record, Roxanne said and clicked play. The recording I'd captured, the one Ethan had snuck, filled the room. My mother's voice, calm, certain, the same cadence she used when she lectured me about modesty. With the trust secured, she'd said, Maya won't have direct access. She's too naive to fight it. A murmur rolled through the chairs. I watched faces change. Polite surprise, dismay, the small look of recognition that comes when you realize you were lied to. My stomach was a tight, focused thing. Roxanne then slid the trust documents across the table. These funds were moved under the pretense of management for the benefit of the beneficiary, Miss Collins. However, our audit reveals multiple transactions labeled as management fees that were routed to accounts directly controlled by Mrs. Collins. Can you explain why? She asked, voice steady. Mr. Halpern opened his mouth. Mom's smile, which until then had looked like a diamond, flickered. There's an explanation, she said. It was to secure Maya's financial future. We were protecting her. Protecting her by transferring $32,000 into a trust you control? Roxanne asked. Silence. Then, soft at first, a neighbor asked, You mean she took her daughter's... It's not that simple, Mom said, the coolness cracking. The funds were ours. We raised her, I stood up. For years I had been small, mannered, apologetic, forgiving. Now I felt immense and tired and furious. Those were my scholarships, I said, voice low but clear. I earned them. Every cent was for my education, my rent, my living. She took them while I was in a different city, starting my life. Heads turned. A woman 6 rows back, who'd known my mother from church, said, I thought Linda helped pay for school. She didn't, Ethan blurted. She took it. Mom's face went hard. You're making claims without evidence, she said. But her eyes darted to Mr. Halpern, who looked suddenly very wooden. Then Roxanne did something slightly theatrical. She pulled up the bank's forensic timeline and spun it onto the projector. Lines, timestamps, the flow of money. Here, she said, are the transfers, scheduled monthly, labeled management fees. Here is the receiving account. Here are the dates when Mrs. Collins withdrew funds unrelated to Maya's welfare. An audible intake of breath. My mother's lips trembled. You don't understand legal things, she whispered. But the whisper was thin, paper thin. But the legal work continued. Audits, subpoenas, more paperwork than I thought a person could hold. There were no instant answers, only the slow, grinding machinery of justice that smells faintly of printer ink and exhaustion. And then, the thing I hadn't planned, people started to ask questions out loud. Friends, coworkers, even strangers who read the article. I had to navigate not just courtrooms but conversations that felt like trial by gossip. As we left the community center that night, my phone buzzed with an anonymous message. She'll ruin you. She always does. I let it buzz. I didn't feel small anymore. I felt seen, but I also felt the tremor of something bigger. The legal freeze was in place, the audit had started, and the public whisper had become a roar. Mom's empire, her carefully curated image, was cracking. We were on the edge of collapse and exposure, and she was not finished fighting back. When the community center confrontation ended, the air felt electric, thick with murmurs and sideways glances. My mother had walked out first, heels striking the linoleum like gunshots, her mask cracked but not shattered. For a long time, I just sat there, letting the noise fade. Ethan squeezed my hand, whispering, "You did it." She's not untouchable anymore. But the truth? Winning didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like exhaustion. Within days, the audit gained traction. Neighbors whispered in grocery store aisles. Dad called me late one night, his voice broken. "She won't talk to me," he admitted. "It's like living with a ghost." The church ladies stopped asking about her committees. She's unraveling, Maya. Part of me wanted to comfort him. Another part wanted to remind him that silence had been his weapon too. He hadn't stolen from me, but he'd stood by while she did. And yet, he was my dad. The one who'd lifted me onto his shoulders, who'd cheered when I sang off key in school plays. His voice cracked as he said, "I'm proud of you." I should have said that sooner. For once, I believed him. Ethan became my anchor. He was furious in a way I couldn't be, raging about how Mom had chosen greed over family, how she'd tried to erase me. But beneath it, I saw fear in him too. "What if she cuts me off next?" he asked one night. "She won't," I said. "You're her golden child. Her last chance to pretend she's perfect." He looked at me, jaw tight. "I don't want to be her chance. I want to be free." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just my fight. It was high too. The article spread further than I expected. Coworkers tiptoed around me, whispering in the break room. A few congratulated me quietly. Samira said, "You're braver than most people I know." But some people pulled away. I saw it in their eyes, the doubt, the suspicion. No one wants to believe a mother could do that to her child. It unsettles their sense of safety. I stopped trying to explain. I let the documents, the hearings, the truth do the talking. As the weeks passed, Mom's armor collapsed. Her bank accounts were flagged, her lawyer subpoenaed, her standing in the community dissolved, but she never apologized. Not once. The last time I saw her, she was standing on the porch, hair perfect, smile brittle. "You've ruined me," she said, her voice low. "Are you happy?" I looked her in the eyes and said softly, "No, Mom, I'm free," and I walked away. But freedom doesn't erase scars. Late at night, her words still echoed, "We wish you were never born." And as much as I wanted closure, I knew the resolution hadn't fully come yet. It's strange. Freedom doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels quiet. Like walking into my apartment and realizing the air doesn't weigh anything anymore. Like standing in the morning light and knowing it's mine, untainted, untouched. The courts froze the trust permanently. My savings, what was left of them, were returned. Not all, but enough. Enough to remind me I wasn't powerless. My mother faced scrutiny she couldn't charm her way out of. Her reputation crumbled, and for the first time in my life, she wasn't the one holding the cards. I poured myself into work at Cinder Labs. Every project I touched felt like reclamation. Every line of code, every design choice, every late-night brainstorm, it was mine. Not hers. Ethan visited often. We'd sit on my balcony, eating cheap tacos, laughing like kids again. He told me he was applying for internships away from home. I don't want to live under her shadow anymore, he said. Good, I told him. You don't have to. And Dad, he was different too. Softer. Quieter. He came to see me once, bringing an old photo album. I should have protected you better, he said. His eyes were wet, his hands trembling. But I want to start now. I let him hug me. And for the first time, it felt like his arms were enough. Do I forgive her? No. Forgiveness isn't owed to people who try to erase you, but I've stopped carrying her cruelty like a second spine. I don't whisper her words to myself anymore. We wish you were never born. They don't define me. They expose her, and I'm still here, breathing, building, becoming. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most, listen to me. You are not their lie. You are not their cruelty. You are yours, your dreams, your work, your stubborn, beautiful survival. I thought being too trusting was my flaw. But it was also my strength. It let me believe in myself when no one else did. And in the end, that belief carried me through. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Tell me, would you forgive betrayal like this, or would you walk away forever? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who's out there listening. I'm Maya Collins. I'm 23. I'm not broken. I'm free.